At first, it feels easy. You talk more, you open up, you start to feel close. And then something shifts. Not suddenly, but quietly. You reply slower. You need more space. You feel a subtle urge to step back, and you don't fully understand why. Because nothing is wrong. So why does closeness start to feel like pressure? 2. Problem deep dive. It's confusing because in the beginning you want the connection. You enjoy the conversations. You feel understood. There's a sense of ease. You think, this feels right. But as things deepen, something changes inside you. You start noticing small things. How often they text, how much they expect, how available you feel you need to be. And instead of feeling closer, you feel watched. Not by them, but by the expectation of them. You start thinking, should I respond now? Do I have to explain this? What if I can't be the same every day? And slowly, you stop acting naturally. You become more careful, more measured. And then, you feel the need to create distance. You take longer to reply. You avoid certain conversations. You pull back emotionally. Not because you don't care, but because something about the closeness feels heavy, like you're being placed into a role you're not sure you can maintain. And that creates a quiet tension between wanting connection and wanting space. But why does getting closer make you feel like you're losing something? 3. Reframe. You're not afraid of connection. You're reacting to identity pressure. Because closeness doesn't just mean being known, it also means being defined. The more someone understands you, the more stable their image of you becomes. And your brain notices that. It starts to feel like, this is who I have to be now, consistently, predictably. And that creates pressure. Because your identity isn't fixed. It shifts. It adapts. It changes depending on context. But in close relationships, there's an expectation of continuity, of sameness. So your brain senses a conflict. Connection requires consistency, but I don't feel consistent. And instead of risking that mismatch, it creates distance. Not to destroy the connection, but to protect your sense of self. But how does your brain turn closeness into something that feels restrictive? 2. Psychological mechanism. To understand this, you need to look at how the brain manages identity and autonomy. Your sense of self is maintained by the default mode network. This system integrates your thoughts, memories, and internal narrative. It keeps your identity flexible. But when you get close to someone, another system becomes active, your social prediction system. This involves areas like the medial prefrontal cortex. It tracks how others see you, what they expect, how your behavior affects the relationship. Now here's where the tension begins. Your brain starts building a model of who I am to them, not just who you are internally, but who you are externally. And that model starts to stabilize. It becomes predictable, repeatable. But your internal self is still fluid, changing, sometimes inconsistent. So your brain detects a mismatch between your evolving internal state and their stable external perception. This creates identity tension. Here's the mental model. Imagine your identity as something flexible, like water, but closeness places it into a container, a shape, defined by how someone understands you. At first, it feels comforting, but over time, it starts to feel restrictive, because you're no longer just being yourself, You're maintaining a version of yourself, and that requires effort. So your brain looks for relief, and the easiest way to relieve that pressure is distance. Not because you don't want connection, but because you want flexibility back. So how do you stay close to someone without feeling like you're losing yourself? 5. Practical framework. You don't need to avoid closeness. You need to reduce identity pressure within it. 1. Allow yourself to be inconsistent. Right now, you feel like you need to show up the same way every time. What to do? Let your behavior vary naturally, without over-explaining. Why it works? This reduces identity rigidity and signals to your brain that inconsistency is safe. Real-life example. Some days you're more responsive. Other days you're quieter. You don't force balance. You allow variation. 2. Stop maintaining a fixed version of yourself. You're trying to match who you were at the start. What to do? Let your current state guide your behavior, not past expectations. Why it works? This reduces cognitive dissonance between past identity and present experience. Real-life example. If you feel less talkative than before, you don't force the same energy. You respond as you are now. 3. Communicate your need for space early. Distance feels safer than explanation, but clarity reduces pressure. What to do? Express your need for space before it builds into withdrawal. Why it works? This prevents your brain from associating closeness with loss of autonomy. Real-life example. You say, "I sometimes need time to recharge. It's not about the connection." And that changes the dynamic. 4. Focus on presence, not performance. You're monitoring how you appear instead of experiencing the interaction. What to do? Shift attention to the moment itself, the conversation, the feeling. Why it works? This reduces self-referential processing and lowers identity pressure. Real-life example. Instead of thinking, "How should I respond?" you listen and respond naturally. 5. Redefine closeness as flexible, not fixed. Right now, closeness feels like a contract, something you have to maintain. What to do? See connection as something that can expand and contract. Why it works? This aligns with the brain's need for autonomy while preserving attachment. Real-life example. Some days you're closer, some days you're more distant, and the relationship still exists. 6. Integration. At its core, this isn't about losing interest, it's about losing flexibility. Your brain doesn't resist connection, it resists constraint. And when closeness starts to feel like a fixed identity, something you have to maintain, it creates pressure. So you step back, not to disconnect, but to return to yourself. But when you understand that, you stop seeing distance as failure and start seeing it as a signal that something in the connection feels too rigid. And that gives you a choice, not to leave, but to adjust. 7. Quiet, empowering close. You don't need to choose between closeness and freedom. You can have both, but only if your identity is allowed to move, to change, to breathe. Because the version of you someone connects with doesn't have to stay the same, and neither do you. So the next time you feel the urge to pull away, pause, not to stop it, but to understand it. Because it might not be telling you to leave the connection. It might just be asking you to return to yourself within it. And that's a very different kind of distance. One that doesn't break connection, but reshapes it.